My name is Lydia Harlow. I'm 29 years old, and I work as an HVAC technician servicing heating and cooling systems in commercial buildings. I say that up front because my ex-fiancé, had this particular way of describing my job. Lydia works in HVAC, Evan would tell people, followed almost immediately by, "It's blue collar, obviously, but she's actually really good at it." Actually, like my competence was the surprising part. For 3 years, I convinced myself it was harmless teasing. Evan Mercer was 26, worked as an office manager at a dermatology clinic, and made around $52,000 a year. With overtime, I pulled in close to $68,000. Together, we weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. We'd been engaged for 4 months. Our wedding was supposed to be in October. The venue has already booked a decent event hall that cost $6,800 for a Saturday evening. My parents had contributed $3,000 toward catering. Evan's parents were covering flowers and the photographer. I had the DJ and honeymoon fund. Nothing extravagant. Just a good wedding with people we loved, decent food, music, and hopefully nobody enduring a 40-minute ceremony while silently wondering when the bar opened. We had also signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment 2 months earlier. Life felt settled. Then, 6 weeks before the wedding, Evan destroyed it while drinking an iced coffee. We were sitting at our kitchen table, reviewing my wedding spreadsheet. Yes, I make spreadsheets. I spend my workdays crawling through mechanical rooms where one wrong measurement can cost thousands of dollars. Organization keeps things from catching fire. Evan leaned back in his chair and said, almost absent-mindedly, "Oh, you can remove the $2,400 from my clothes budget." I looked up. "What?" "My suit and everything. It's handled." "Handled how?" "Someone paid for it." I remember smiling because I assumed his parents had surprised him. "Who?" He took another sip. "My sugar mommy." I stared at him. Evan stared back. For a second, I genuinely wondered whether I'd misheard him. "Your what?" He sighed like I was already making this difficult. "It's not what you're thinking. It's basically a financial arrangement." I closed the laptop. "Explain." "She gives me money sometimes. I keep her company. Dinner, drinks, events, stuff like that." "Who is she?" "Vanessa." "How long?" He hesitated. That hesitation told me more than anything he'd said so far. Like 6 months. My stomach dropped. 6 months? "Lydia, don't start. We've been engaged for 4. "I know. And for 2 months before you proposed to me, another woman was paying you to spend time with her." "That's such a dramatic way of saying it. How would you say it?" He shrugged. "A side hustle." I actually laughed once. Not because anything was funny. My brain simply rejected the sentence. A side hustle? Lots of guys do things like this. "No, Evan, lots of guys drive Uber." His face tightened. "We haven't slept together." I said nothing. "She likes younger men. She's lonely. She has money. I go to dinner with her. She buys me things. That's it." "She's single?" Another pause. "No. Married?" "Yes." I pushed my chair slightly away from the table. "And her husband knows?" "That's their situation. It's not my business." The irony was almost impressive. Then he added, "Actually, Vanessa wants to come to the reception." That was the moment something inside me went completely still. "You invited her to our wedding?" "Not the ceremony, just the reception." "Why?" "Because she's been generous. It would be rude not to." I looked at the man I had planned to marry and realized he was discussing inviting his married sugar mommy to celebrate our marriage, as though the real etiquette problem would be excluding her. "Keep the suit," I said. He blinked. "What?" "Keep the suit. Keep whatever else Vanessa bought you." I stood. "We're done." Evan laughed, not nervously, dismissively. "Come on." "I'm serious. You're ending our engagement because somebody saved us $2,400? You've secretly had a sugar mommy for 6 months. It isn't cheating. You hid another relationship from me." "Relationship?" He rolled his eyes. Jesus, Lydia. I grabbed my keys. Behind me, he said, "You're being insecure." I stopped at the doorway. "No, I'm finally being informed." Then I left. I drove to my friend Rachel's house and sat in her driveway for almost 15 minutes before going inside. When I finally told her what happened, she stared at me. "Please tell me you're joking." "I wish." I slept in her guest room that night. The next morning I called the venue. We were past the full refund deadline. Canceling meant losing my $2,000 deposit. I authorized it anyway. Then I texted Evan. "The wedding is canceled. I'll collect my things this week. We also need to figure out the lease." His response came in 18 separate messages. I was insecure, controlling, jealous of successful people, embarrassing him, throwing away 3 years over nothing. Then came the message that removed whatever doubt remained. "You literally fix air conditioners for a living. You should be grateful someone like me agreed to marry you." I stared at it for a long time. Then I took a screenshot. Because when someone finally tells you how little they think of you, save yourself the trouble of arguing. Believe them. That should have been the end. It wasn't. Evan had been careless. His tablet and laptop were still in the apartment, both devices he'd previously given me permission to use. Before he changed his passwords, notifications began appearing from a messaging app. Vanessa. Dinner reservations. Payment confirmations. Photographs of gifts. Shoes. A watch. The wedding suit. I didn't need to dig very far before the 6-month side hustle started looking considerably less innocent. One photograph showed Evan sitting beside a woman in an upscale restaurant booth. She appeared to be in her mid-50s. Her hand rested on his thigh. Another message mentioned meeting at a hotel. Then I found payment records. Thousands of dollars. Eventually, I had enough publicly identifying information to determine who she was. Vanessa Hale. Regional sales director for a medical supply company. 54. Married 22 years. 2 children in college. Her public professional profile featured a family photograph. Finding her husband, Richard, took less than 10 minutes. He worked in education administration and had a public profile of his own. I sat at my kitchen table staring at his photograph. I wasn't interested in revenge against a stranger. But I kept thinking about how I had felt 48 hours earlier planning a wedding while everyone except me apparently understood what my relationship actually was. If someone had known, wouldn't I have wanted them to tell me? So I wrote Richard a short message. No insults. No threats. No dramatic accusations. Just facts. I attached 3 screenshots. 1 payment for Evan's wedding clothes, 1 restaurant photograph with Vanessa's hand clearly on him, and 1 message where she joked about seeing what he would wear when he married me. Then I pressed send. 4 hours later, Richard replied, "Thank you for telling me. I know this couldn't have been easy for you either." That was all. For nearly 2 days, nothing happened. Then, Friday night, around 9, someone began pounding on Rachel's front door. Rachel looked through the window. Then she turned toward me. "It's Evan." I opened the door. His face was pale with fury. "You contacted her husband." And the way he said it told me immediately that whatever had happened after I pressed send was much bigger than I knew. "You contacted her husband." Evan pushed past me before I could answer. Rachel looked at me, then at him. "Do I need to call someone?" "No," I said. "I've got it." She gave Evan a look that could have stripped paint off a wall, then disappeared upstairs. He stood in the middle of her living room with his fists clenched. "You had no right." My fiancé was secretly seeing a married woman for 6 months. I think I had some rights. That was my private life. "You were wearing my ring." He flinched. "What happens between Vanessa and Richard has nothing to do with you. What happened between Vanessa and you had everything to do with me." His voice dropped. "Do you even understand what you've done?" "What did I do?" "Richard's talking to a divorce lawyer. Vanessa cut me off. Completely. No calls, no money. Nothing." For a second I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because even now the first thing Evan mentioned was the money. "Sounds like Vanessa has bigger problems than your allowance." His face twisted. You ruined everything. For who? For everyone. I looked around Rachel's living room. I seem okay. You're sleeping in your friend's house. Correct. You canceled your wedding. Also correct. And you think you're okay? I think I'm better than I was 3 days ago. That shut him up. For about 10 seconds. Then the anger disappeared from his face. Just vanished. He sat down on the couch. Lydia. I hated the softness in his voice more than the yelling. I screwed up. I said nothing. I got caught up in it. In what? The attention, the money, feeling like someone wanted to spoil me. I folded my arms. She made me feel important. And I didn't? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He looked at the floor. For the first time since this started, he looked genuinely small. I love you. That sentence almost got through. 3 years does something to your instincts. Your brain can understand betrayal before your body does. Part of me still remembered. Sunday mornings, grocery runs, bad movies, the night he proposed. For maybe 10 seconds, I wanted the version of him I thought existed. Then I remembered his message. You should be grateful someone like me agreed to marry you. The feeling died. The wedding is canceled. He looked up. We could still fix it. No. The venue's booked. Cancelled. His face changed. You actually canceled it? Yes. My parents already paid for flowers. They can request whatever refund is available. Lydia, please. No. He stared at me like I was the unreasonable one. Then he stood and left. I thought that was the confrontation. It wasn't. It was the opening act. The next morning, Evan's mother called. She had always been polite to me, but there had been little comments over the years. Questions about whether HVAC work was safe for a woman. Comments about how Evan had always imagined marrying someone with a more flexible career. Once, at Christmas, she introduced me to a relative by saying, Lydia works with air conditioners, like I cleaned window units in parking lots. So I wasn't shocked when she skipped hello. I think you're being incredibly selfish. Good morning to you too. My son made a mistake. He had a sugar mommy for 6 months. He said it was dinners. He took thousands of dollars. Silence. Then she said, that is between them. He was engaged to me. You had no right to contact Vanessa's husband. I disagree. You embarrassed our family. Invitations are already out. What are we supposed to tell people? The truth would save time. She hung up. Then, Evan's younger brother started texting. At first, the messages were emotional. He's devastated. He hasn't slept. He's barely eating. Then came one I couldn't ignore. He's saying things that scare me. I called his mother immediately. She sighed. Oh, ignore his brother. He's exaggerating because he wants you to respond. I stared at my phone after she hung up. That entire family seemed to believe consequences were something other people administered to them. 2 days later, Vanessa called me. I had never spoken to her. Her voice was lower than I expected. Controlled. You're Lydia. Yes. You destroyed my marriage. No. A pause. You sent Richard private information. I sent him information about his wife paying my fiancé. You don't understand adult relationships. I almost smiled. Vanessa was 54. Apparently, 25 additional years of life experience had taught her to pay engaged men and call anyone who objected immature. You're a child, she continued. I'm 29. You have no idea what marriage is. I know enough not to secretly bankroll someone else's fiancé. Her breathing changed. You could be sued. For telling your husband the truth? You accessed private communications. I accessed devices Evan and I shared, and accounts he'd previously authorized me to use. If you think you have a case, call an attorney. She went quiet. Then she said something that finally made me angry. He came after me. What? Evan pursued this arrangement. I laughed once. You're both blaming each other already. He knew exactly what he was doing. So did you. She hung up. 3 days later, Evan called me furious. Do you know what she's saying? I almost didn't answer. What? She told Richard's attorney I pursued her. And? And she's making me look like some kind of scammer. Were you taking money from her? That isn't the point. It was absolutely the point. Apparently, Vanessa's husband had moved quickly. He hired a divorce attorney, and the attorney started pulling financial records. That's when the Just Dinners story fell apart. There were Venmo transfers totaling a little over $9,000. Then credit card statements, expensive restaurants, a watch, designer shoes, hotel charges, 2 of them. When I asked Evan about the hotels, he went silent. That silence answered the question I had stopped needing answered. Altogether, Vanessa had spent somewhere around $14,000 on him. The direct transfers were only part of it. Richard's attorney argued the spending was marital money being used outside the marriage. Vanessa responded by claiming Evan had aggressively pursued her. Evan responded by insisting Vanessa manipulated him. 2 adults who had spent 6 months making decisions together suddenly became each other's victims. The second consequences arrived. Meanwhile, Evan's name started circulating. Vanessa worked in medical sales. Evan worked at a dermatology clinic. Different industries, technically. Same general professional ecosystem. People knew people. One of the dermatologists at Evan's clinic apparently knew Richard through a local nonprofit board. Nobody confronted Evan directly. They didn't have to. He told his brother that conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Coworkers looked at him differently. He became convinced people were talking. They probably were. The apartment was the next problem. We had signed a 12-month lease only 2 months earlier. Rent was $2,100. Evan initially told me he'd stay there. Fine. I wanted out. Then he realized he couldn't afford it alone. His take-home pay was around $3,200 a month. Rent would eat most of it before his car payment, insurance, food, credit cards, and everything else. So he called, "You need to keep paying your half until I find a roommate." "No. Your name is on the lease." He was right. Legally, I couldn't simply disappear. So I contacted the landlord. Early termination fee. 2 months' rent, $4,200. I called Evan. "If we split the termination fee, that's $2,100 each." "No." "Why?" "Because you're the one leaving. You had a sugar mommy. That has nothing to do with the lease." Technically correct. Morally ridiculous. But technically correct. I spent that night looking at my savings account. The wedding cancellation had already cost me $2,000. Now another $4,200. Money I had worked for in rooftop units in July heat. Money earned from 6 a.m. emergency calls. Money Evan once dismissed as coming from fixing air conditioners. The next morning I paid the entire fee. It hurt a lot, but I wanted my name off every document connecting me to him. Sometimes freedom comes with an invoice. Mine was $4,200. Evan moved back into his parents' house, his childhood bedroom. The same family calling me selfish now. Had their 26-year-old son back home because Vanessa's money was gone and I was no longer subsidizing the life he'd gotten used to. His mother blamed me. His brother blamed me. Evan blamed me. Vanessa probably blamed me between meetings with her attorney. One person didn't. Evan's father called me one evening. He was a retired electrician. Quiet man. We had always gotten along. "Lydia," he said, "I'm not calling to change your mind." I waited. "I just wanted to tell you that you were always good to my son." My throat tightened. "And I'm sorry he wasn't good enough to you." I didn't know what to say, he continued. "I've spent 35 years working with my hands. Don't ever let anybody make you feel small for making an honest living." That broke something in me. Not dramatically, just enough that I had to sit down. "Thank you. Take care of yourself." He hung up. A week later, I received one more text from him. "I heard you paid the entire lease termination. That wasn't fair to you. I'm sorry. I saved it." Because decency from one unexpected person can feel enormous when everyone else is trying to convince you that honesty was the crime. By then, Vanessa's divorce had moved past threats. Richard's attorney had documented nearly every dollar. Evan was back at his parents' house. And I was standing in an empty apartment surrounded by moving boxes, realizing something strange. 6 weeks earlier, I had thought my biggest problem was whether our DJ needed another deposit. Now there was no wedding, no shared home, no fiancé, and somehow, despite everything I'd lost, I could finally breathe. I didn't know yet that Evan was about to make one last attempt to pull me back in. And this time, he wouldn't even contact me himself. 3 weeks after I paid the lease termination fee, Evan tried one last time. He didn't call me himself. A mutual friend from college, Daniel, texted. Evan wants to know if you'd sit down with him. He says he's willing to forgive you for contacting Vanessa's husband, if you're willing to talk about whether there's anything left to save. I read it twice. Forgive me. After 6 months of secretly taking money from another woman while wearing my engagement ring, Evan had somehow rewritten the story until he was offering me mercy. I replied, There's nothing to discuss. Please don't contact me about this again. Daniel respected that. 2 weeks later, Evan's brother sent me another message. This one wasn't angry. Evan was behind on his car payment. His credit cards were piling up. He'd applied for other jobs because the atmosphere at the clinic had become unbearable. Then came the line that stayed with me. He's sleeping in his teenage bedroom with the wedding suit hanging in the closet. I know he messed up, but does he really deserve all this? I didn't answer immediately. I thought about it for almost a day. Then I wrote, He doesn't deserve every bad thing that happens to him, but I didn't cause every bad thing happening to him. Evan made choices for 6 months. Vanessa made choices for 6 months. I made one choice, I told the truth. I can't fix what I didn't break. His brother never replied. By then, Vanessa's divorce was moving quickly. Richard contacted me once more because his attorney needed copies of the screenshots I'd preserved. I sent them. The financial records showed approximately $14,000 had been spent on Evan through transfers, gifts, restaurants, and hotels. Richard's attorney argued that Vanessa had wasted marital assets on the affair. Vanessa eventually agreed to settle. Richard didn't give me many details afterward, and I didn't ask. He only told me the settlement favored him significantly, and that the money Vanessa spent on Evan had been considered during the division of assets. His final message said, I spent 22 years with someone I didn't actually know. I'd rather start over now than spend another year pretending. Thank you for giving me the truth. I read it 3 times. I hadn't contacted him because I wanted to become anyone's hero. I had been hurt, angry. Maybe part of me wanted Vanessa to experience the same reality check I had. But Richard deserved the information. Sometimes anger and doing the right thing happened to point in the same direction. There was still one final connection between Evan and me, the engagement ring. It had cost me $4,100. I asked for it back. Evan refused. So I paid an attorney $200 to send a formal demand letter. 4 days later, the ring arrived. I sold it to a jeweler for $2,600 and put every dollar toward rebuilding the savings I'd burned getting out of our apartment. Then I moved into a small 1-bedroom. $1,450 a month. Nothing fancy. Rachel helped me move. My mom showed up with pots and pans and spent 20 minutes crying before admitting she'd never trusted Evan's smile. For the first time in months, I laughed. I wasn't dating. I wasn't downloading apps. I worked overtime and slowly rebuilt my savings. More importantly, I remembered what it felt like to come home without wondering what someone wasn't telling me. The wedding was supposed to be the following Saturday. I knew because the reminder was still sitting in my phone. Wedding day. I stared at it for a while. 3 years together. A $2,000 venue deposit. A $4,200 lease penalty. A $200 lawyer letter. A future that disappeared during one conversation at a kitchen table. But the strangest thing was that I no longer wanted that future back. I kept thinking about the way Evan had told me about Vanessa. Casual, unbothered, like my opinion was simply an administrative detail. That bothered me almost more than the money. People who respect you don't present betrayal like a budget update and expect you to adjust the spreadsheet. And I kept thinking about one other thing. You literally fix air conditioners for a living. You should be grateful someone like me agreed to marry you. For years, I had let comments like that make me feel smaller. Not anymore. I crawl through ceilings and mechanical rooms. I work on rooftops in July heat. Sometimes I come home smelling like refrigerant, dust, and insulation. It isn't glamorous, but it's honest. And after everything that happened, honesty suddenly seemed more valuable than the wedding, the apartment, the ring, or the life I'd thought I was building. I looked at the calendar reminder one last time. Then I pressed delete.